Hey, welcome to the Roark Mix. This show is all about making a mixtape. It is the whole premise of the show is to talk to our guests, always usually a friend, someone we know, or someone we want to get to know, and we talk about music and how it's been in their life and the meanings it's had and associations they make with music, and then at the end of that conversation, we ask one question, a big question of like, what kind of a mixtape do you want us to make for you? Because after that conversation, we say goodbye to the guest, and Chris and I come back a couple of days later, and based on what we found out in this conversation and the associations we made, we're making a mixtape for our friend, and that's the second part of this show. So the first part's with the guest. The second part is Chris and I yammering on about music, the choice we made, and some stories about the music, hopefully, and yeah, and we just put it together. So we present to you our mixtape. So we were very lucky to have our friend Tim be our first guest and to let us play around and to make a bunch of mistakes. And there's some technical stuff going on. That's I don't even know how to use this camera. So that was one thing that you'll see. But the bottom line is that we had a great chat with Tim. We all enjoyed that. And then Chris and I had a great chat afterwards. And yeah, so this is kind of this is a recording of like snippets of all of our conversations. So yeah, it just jumps back and forth in the conversation we had with Tim. And then Chris and I have had a bunch of thoughts and a bunch of laughs, and there you go. So thanks for coming by and enjoy the first episode of the Roark Mix, and we'll see where it goes from here. Welcome to the very first episode of the Roark Mix. We've got our friend Tim Faveri with us, who, you know, I think about my relationship with Tim, 3 decades, 35 years, I think. Met each other at Queen's, and
wow.
Yeah, and I think Chris was soon after that, right? You met him a few years down the road?
1989. 88 or 80.
88 or 89.
Yeah. And you know, I do think of Tim in a musical way, because Tim was our choreographer for Air Bands 2 years in a row. He did all the mixing, of course. He essentially was in charge. And we got second place twice. So room for improvement.
Eternal.
But exactly. But you also made mixtapes.
Oh.
And there was many a nights where a number of us would borrow the mixtapes for the evening.
Unbeknownst to my knowledge.
Well,
obviously.
We had keys to your room.
Yeah. You had key to my room.
You had a door?
Yeah, I didn't even have a door.
A luxury.
So, you know, the whole premise of this is that we're going to ask you a bunch of questions, and the whole idea is that we're going to make you a mixtape based on what we find out tonight.
Jeez. Oh.
Mm-hmm. So it's like the Tim Faveri tribute mixtape.
This is pretty cool.
Okay.
This is just volume 1.
We might need a couple of volumes. We might need
90 minute tapes.
Yeah. All right. So, you know, Chris and I were talking about questions for quite some time, and you know, where did it start? You know, in terms of like, you know, your background, grew up in London, parents psychologist, younger sister, older sister. Like, we could do an entire show on just this one question, you know. But like growing up, like, what was the mood in the house? Like, was there lots of music in the house? You know, who was in charge?
There was a lot of music in the house. And remember, back in the 70s, there was a family room with a TV, and there was a living room with a turntable.
Yeah.
That's what we had anyway, right? And, you know, the turntable was pretty sacred. Until we were teenagers, we weren't allowed to touch the turntable because we're going to scratch all the vinyl, right?
Yeah.
And we were pretty eclectic as a family. You know, when I think back, my dad and his selection of taste in music was stuff like the Guess Who and Burton Cummings.
Yeah.
Burton Cummings came out with his solo album. That was played over and over and over in our house. But he was also into Willie Nelson and Patsy Cline and Luciano Pavarotti and the Three Tenors, right?
Yeah.
Yet my mom was disco queen, you know, Lionel Richie and everything about current pop.
Yeah.
80s and 80s disco. So
did they have wars? Like who was in, like who won the war? Like on a Friday night, who got to choose?
Well, my dad and I were outnumbered, right? So
Yeah.
it typically when the good headphones came out, you know, those big white puffy headphones with the black really soft padding, that's when we all escaped into our own music and didn't disturb anyone, right? But there was only one turntable in the house, and that was in the living room.
Yeah, I want to reach back to the diverse selections in the house. I think we may have had the same mothers. Patsy went through a disco phase that we still talk about, and having a hippie music loving mom in the house, we may have had virtually the same experiences, and I think that's what makes a musical experience in house great, is the fact that you may have Luciano Pavarotti, and you may have Andy Williams, you may have Frank Sinatra, you may have ABBA, and it may happen all on the same day. It could happen
Neil Diamond. Yeah.
And that really takes your imagination back, and I think if you heard 4 of those selected songs that you heard in the Faveri home as a kid, it would take you right back to that living room or the family room, and I think that's part of the magic of music too. So it's so cool.
How about the sisters? Did older sister have an influence? What, 2 years older, 3 years older?
2 years older. Yeah, lots kind of influences. Like she was out 2 years before me, being able to go downtown and go to the record shops and bring back stuff. But you know, as we'll probably talk later, there's this gender divide on music in some cases that resonates, and sometimes it doesn't resonate, right? Yeah. So when he was bringing home Barry Manilow, I didn't mix with me, right? So
yeah. So you talked about when you got the headphones and then you could have your own world, right? Yeah. Do you remember what was that first band that you're like, okay, I found a band, I found my thing? It wasn't your dad's music, it wasn't your mom's music. It was okay, this is mine.
This was, I think it was probably similar actually that with my sister though, but this was the first first album.
Yeah.
That we, that I had headphoned and if I probably take this out, the grooves are all worn down, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know, what was that, 1980, 1981, something like that.
I remember going to a grade 8 fair with this girl named Pam, and that was playing nonstop.
Yeah, so, nonstop, yeah. Right? And
yeah, Another One Bites the Dust.
Another One Bites the Dust. Crazy Little Thing Called Love. All those. That was my first experience, because at that age I was allowed to touch the turntable as well. But before then, I was going to scratch all the records, right?
Yeah.
All my parents' records. So it was almost like a coming of age where you buy your first album and you can do whatever you want with that album, because it's just don't touch my albums, but your albums, right?
Was that the original? Was that the actual original album from your house? Like, is that like 40 years old?
It's got to be, because my parents passed me a bunch of milk crates.
Wow.
When they downsized from our house that we grew up, and this was in it, so it's got to be it, right? My dad's side of the family, huge Italian family, and every year, maybe 4 times a year, we'd be in Toronto with all the cousins and the extended family. And we were in a unique spot where we were probably 4 to 7 years removed of all our other cousins. because we were younger. My dad was more of a younger brother than his older siblings. And so my cousins were all teenagers when we were still quite young, and we'd walk down into the freaking basement where they're all hanging out with the shag carpeting and the wood paneling, and Leo Sayer playing on the turntable, or some eclectic piece of music, and they would be in high heel clogs and bell bottoms, right? And it was like pure 70s stuff, right? So the only connections we even had with our cousins was through music. And that's pretty interesting when you think about it.
Being one of the few non-Italians in my high school, there was a great divide at St. Michael's College School among the Italian fellas. And they were drawn very strongly along rocker and disco lines. And they crossed back and forth. But it was amazing that while it may seem contradictory, that when you look at it back over the years, there's a lot of similarities, and there's a lot of important music that you may not liked one or the other. But when you go back, I think the point of the matter is that both genres put a smile on your face for different reasons, and it's a great way to connect to the music too. So if you were in the basement with Familia Faveri, you probably would have heard both sides of that.
Totally, absolutely.
Hey, and that's Chris and I were talking the other day about factions, because you mentioned the whole thing about you said musically ambidextrous, in terms of, so when you're growing up, so take yourself outside the household, and London, went to Oak Ridge. Was there distinct groups? Like, I come from a small town, either you like rock and roll or you didn't. Like, it was that simple, was there an eyeliner crew or was there and where did you cross those boundaries, or were you like just one?
I was metrosexual when it came to music. I was ambidextrous. Never got into the headbanger crowd, stoner crowd, stoner jacket. I think that was probably a good descriptor of that crowd. But we had a very artsy school as well, a preppy school. It was a preppy school. It was a jock school. So I played in that preppy jock, artsy, realm on any one day and time, and it was quite interesting. Like that's, I think, why movies like Breakfast Club resonated so much with our generation, right? Because it just hit the nail on the head in suburban kind of high school lifestyle, right? Downtown Toronto. Certainly in the hinterlands, that's what it was. It had to be something like I remember I was best friends with the buddy right across the street, and in grade 6 or grade 7 was when we all had girlfriends, right? And we'd invite them over when his parents were out, and we'd all get a section of the sectional in the rec room, right? And it was just basically making out, right? And the only thing I can remember from a musical perspective that comes to mind, because we had this, there were a couple of us, and we had our girlfriends over, and we were making out on the sectional, and my one buddy had to do the deed and break up with his girlfriend. So he had the cassette recorder, the tape recorder, the thing that it was only about this big, and it, you flip down and you put the cassette in, and that was our stereo. So he put it in. It was the Eagles' "Heartache Tonight," like that. And he was making the breakup, and the cue was, as soon as he hit that music and we were going to play it, we had to get out because he was going to break up with his girlfriend. It was pretty powerful for us. But
did anyone lose a plot? Did anyone forget to leave?
No, it was the cue. Like we all knew
Okay.
this was rehearsed.
Yeah.
So we all dispersed over to different parts of the house. But you know, at first memory from a musical perspective, it was about breakup for me. You know,
Yeah.
and power of music. Because when you think about the lyrics, you know, there's going to be a heartache tonight. It was pretty interesting.
Was there a cool kid in your group who was the musical sensei, who had the cool records? Maybe you had an older brother. Was there a kid who kind of knew more than anyone, who was a little more informed musically, maybe a little bit more mature, who was sort of the leader of the pack in terms of influencing your musical taste when you were just about to head into high school?
Yeah, that would have been that guy. His name was Brian Bessie, and he was the youngest of three, who were all at least four. His older brother Bill was 4 years older than us. So yeah, we got all the hand-me-downs of the vinyl and the records from them, right? And it was pretty fun.
First concert. What was it? Where were you?
God, you know, that's a whew. I think, Brad, you might have been at the same concert. Was
London Gardens, general admission.
London Gardens, general admission, Triumph, Allied Forces tour. I think backing up Triumph was Nazareth and Coney Hatch.
There's Coney Hatch. I never missed a show.
Yeah. So this is London, Ontario, right? And I think the WWF wrestling event was the night before, with Captain Lou Albano and Goldie Rogers and Jimmy Superfly Snuka. Like it was just.
Was the Iron Sheik there? I remember the Iron Sheik.
Yeah, Iron Sheik. It was crazy. And you know, it wasn't like, I wasn't into big power trios back then, like Triumph. Yeah. Everyone went, right? Everyone. Yeah. And when I think back, of course I was into a band like Triumph, like the talent, particularly because I grew up loving drums and Gil Moore on the drum set. Like, holy crap, like, yeah, amazing, right? But that was the first one. But there were some incredible early concerts back then too, like Police Picnics at the X. Like the X, think about us growing up, like Brad, you and I grew up in Southwestern Ontario, but going into Toronto was a big deal, right?
Huge deal.
As a young teenager and going in by ourselves, whether it was on the bus or we got to drive from our parents or whatever, we've hit the big time. And the Toronto exhibition, the X, was it. And when I think back to Police Picnics, oh my God, David Bowie at the X. I went and saw fucking the Jackson 5 and Michael Jackson at the X.
The Victory Tour.
The Victory Tour was actually, you know, when I think back to all the concerts I went to, that was spectacular, right?
You might remember, Tim, the tickets were outrageously priced at $30.
Yeah, like, and they had all these pyrotechnics and stuff that no one had done before, right? Like they were like the game changers of that kind of sensory experience at concerts. Whereas, you know, again, I went to the Who and Bowie, and it was just the big stage with the big speakers and lots of lights. But it was completely different when you hit the Jacksons on stage, right?
And as usual, Tito stole the show.
Tito was amazing.
He always did.
I do remember one of the Police Picnics. Flock of Seagulls, Joan Jett,
King Sunday Day in the African Beat.
Yeah.
Great.
And we were down
James Brown
on the infield, and I was pretty short back then, like I was, I don't know, 14, 15, and all I could see was the blonde hair of Sting's head, you know, with the headband on, and it was like, wow, I came all this way, I can't even see them.
I was going to ask that question. Where was the preferred? Because I know for me, especially London Gardens, right at the stage or right in front of the speakers. I couldn't hear a thing for days after that.
Oh, yeah, this is a total age demographic thing. Of course, when you want to be front of stage, when you
Yeah.
feel the crush and you can feel the whole.
And there was a crush.
Oh yeah, the pulse of the music. But
yeah,
nowadays it's like try and get close, but go off to the side, right?
It's a different sonic experience these days. The Who 1980 Exhibition Stadium. Keith Moon was dead. Kenny Jones taken over on drums.
Just taken over, right?
Yeah, just absolutely. Maybe the week.
I was there.
And one thing that's interesting about that experience, I remember. I mean, I was in grade 10 and loving every second of it. Entwistle's bass was like a mule kick to the chest for an hour and 45 minutes. And the way that the sound is set up in modern stadiums, it's not done that way. So you don't get that same experience of being absolutely beat up for an hour and a half, or 5 minutes, or whatever the set is. Unbelievable.
Well, it might have been a later Who concert, but I remember when I went there and Joe Jackson was the cover band, and incredibly talented guy.
Bad choice.
But everyone wanted the Who. And so some Yahoo threw a beer bottle, hit him in the head, and he basically flipped off the crowd and he walked off. So the crowd was getting completely agitated through an hour of waiting for the Who to come on. And when they came on, it was just a crush to the stage, right? Like it was just unbelievable. But that was also after the heels of, the late 70s in Cincinnati, when there, 13 people died. So there was it was a really interesting transition of those big open air concerts, as opposed to, I think the best experiences I've had are in the smaller venues.
Yeah. Okay. Think of, I guess it could be early on, but it even could be like university days. Your 3 go-to bands or artists,
Wow. 3 go-tos. Again, it's kind of all over the map. Growing up, there was I think I had a big affinity for bands like the Who. We talked about them. As we went into university, there, it just broadened out significantly. I think we had more access to music through the late 80s and early 90s, and then this whole digital space. So, it's hard to put a finger on specific bands, but right off the top of my head, it probably goes back to old school, like the Who, Led Zeppelin, and then I have to jump over to my mom's side, and I'd probably say I'm a big in the closet Michael Jackson fan too, right?
Not so in the closet.
I'm fully out. I'm just flip on off the wall all the time. It's just fantastic.
So, the university year is awesome, but I'm kind of interested, getting a little more recent. So you have the influence from your parents.
Yeah.
And then you have 2 kids.
Yeah.
Did you actively try to get them listening to cool tunes, or was it just the kid stuff, or how much of a role did you were you okay, got to make sure they listen to the Who, Led Zeppelin, fun stuff,
Well, look, they were in, this is Gen Z, right? Like they were on this whole digital interface where everything went digital. And remember when we were switching our music from tapes to CDs, and we thought that was the be all end all. Well, they were switching from tapes to the World Wide Web of music, right?
Yeah.
And what I distinctly remember, particularly Zach, my oldest, who is much more into music, I think, was yeah, Dad, all that old stuff is pretty cool, but look at all the access that I have through the internet. And I didn't even know how he was getting music, because he was getting all this great music.
Well, he would have been like 14-ish when Napster came, or maybe he was really young when Napster came along with all the file sharing. But those
Yeah,
kids,
no,
they
like,
can get
so
whatever
he
they
was
want.
in the generation when iPod and then streaming came out. Yep. And then it
They didn't have that crazy burden of paying for music.
Right, exactly. But the beauty of it is that when I pulled the old turntable out, sitting there in the back, he went old school. And I think that he knows more about music than I do, because he has had access to everything, versus us that just look to our vinyl, look to our tapes, or our own playlists on the phone. He's been really influential to me recently in music, for sure. It's pretty amazing.
Such as, like, because I thought he was a little more into the more urban, like a little more rap stuff, or am I wrong?
Oh God, like that generation is, right? Particularly in athletics. No, but he listens to everything. That's a great question, because when I think back, he introduced me to a very current band, Greta Van Fleet.
Mm-hmm.
You guys know them.
Little Led Zeppelin.
A little Led Zeppelin. Fuck. The first time I listened to them, I thought, that's Robert Page. That's Robert Plant.
I don't mean to shit
Robert
on
Plant,
because everyone's a derivative of something. So they're fine.
Right? And he said,
here we go. You're crisping them. Let's go.
Well, but this is the thing. Like he said, Dad, all those Led Zeppelin albums you have down in the basement, these guys sound exactly the same. I said, what the heck? Let me listen to them. And I said, holy crap, they do, right? And maybe that's a thing that they're trying to achieve, but no one's ever done that before, right? And it's pretty novel, I thought. But it took my son, who's now 21, 22, to introduce me to that band, right? Because I would have never heard them. Because if I heard it on the radio driving down in the car, I would have thought it was freaking Led Zeppelin.
Thoughts, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, but isn't this an interesting time? Because I don't think anyone of our generation ever influenced their parents musically in any way. They were pretty much set in their ways.
Totally.
And their response was generally to turn
it down.
But honestly, I think that's the way it should be. I think that and I struggle with this with my own kids, who have great musical not just talent, but to write their own music, but also because I think part of the musical experience is having the chasm between you and your parents. And when you're sitting there jamming out to the same tunes that your dad loves, I don't think it's an honest experience. It may be good temporarily, but I love the tension between teenager and parent when they fucking hated your music, because then that gave you ownership. It gave you something, it gave you a badge to wear that gave an honest representation of the relationship. And I think that it was a better way to go.
Well, I can't disagree with that. And we had those experiences as well in the early days. As well, but you're also from a musical family, Chris, right?
Not a successful musical family.
We were consumers of music. You were producers of music, right?
Well, it's funny, and because I'm so full of shit, because last night I was up late playing with Brendan here, and he was
jamming,
ripping some Smashing Pumpkins songs last night, and he's so kind, he'll say, okay, here's the progression, you do, and then I'll just roll over top, and it was so much fun. So I'm sitting there with a giant shit-eating grin on my face, and this is in the wake of me telling you that there should be musical tension between generations. So I'm completely full of shit, obviously. because I love so much that the kids are musical, and we can connect through that. I've learned tons about music through my kids, and spent a lot of time in the car with my daughter, trying to appreciate Ariana Grande and Taylor Swift, and you know, and those aren't just the ones she's brought to the table. She brings some great ones too. But I like the tension with parents. I always thought it was important to not like what your parents do, and now I'm just eating a ton of crow because I'm just loving that shared experience of music.
Oh, totally. Can't agree more.
So Tim, what it kind of leads into what music can you not stand? You know, if your kids are to put something on, or, you know, because I know, I was thinking about this question myself. I know it's not about me, but when I was younger, I couldn't stand a lot of things, but now I'm extremely accepting of many things. And God, I fell in love with country after we went to Nashville like 4 years ago. Like that was, you know, I kind of like country-ish, but I'm like, wow, this is a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you. I've never been a country fan, but it probably even started before our Nashville trip. But our kids got into country because that was just the mainstream in that generation. Like country had become mainstream pretty quick, and so I've never been a fan of country, but it's played regularly in our house now, and you know, it's something that's fine. I still like the whole death metal, heavy metal stuff has never really resonated with me. I think that's probably still true, but there's some pretty good country stuff out there. It to a point where 2 years ago, when we drove Jordan down to North Carolina for her first year of school, we purposely timed it to stop in Pittsburgh for a Georgia-Florida line concert in Pittsburgh, and the backup was Dan and Shay, and that was actually a really good concert. If you like, kind of, it was a little bit like a church sermon, but it was great. Like it was fun. It was really fun, and the music was good. For sure.
I think what new country does so well is they tell great stories. They tell similar stories, but they tell similar great stories, and they have an uncanny knack of connecting with their audience in a way that a lot of musical genres don't. It's not an exclusive form of music. It's bring it all, and it's fun. I think that's the main thing. Sure, I mean there's a lot of religiosity connected to Southern country, which
it's wholesome, it's family, it's
they do it right, and it represents the purity, in a sense, of American music, because it does tell a story. And the fact that the story is now evolved, it's no longer pickup trucks, dogs, boots, and girls. It tells a wider range of tales, and it's good for the industry. It's good for music, and it moves the ball forward.
All right, we're gonna do like maybe 8 questions here that are a little more rapid fire, so we won't go too deep into the. We'll take off a psychologist hat, and what is, if you could travel in time, obviously now or backwards, but who is the one band or artist, singer that you would love to see, and where? What's the venue?
Ooh, I think I personally, it would be the Beatles. You know, we grew up in the early 70s, right when they shut it down, right? And my parents were so influenced by them. We listened to them all the time, but we never got. I never got it. Obviously, we're able to see them. So, you know, that's probably a pretty generic answer, but it would be the Beatles. But the other thing would be, you know, if I go back in time and see the Tragically Hip, because we we grew up in Kingston when, in pretty formative years, when the Tragical Hip was the house band of the local pub, right? And they had great stuff. And then they grew and they expanded and they diversified and became massive, massive artists. But to go back to a local pub or Fort Henry or some local Kingston environment, to hear all their stuff. And one of my biggest regrets was not traveling back to Kingston and trying to get into that last show, but to do it in their prime and then them singing all their, even their current tunes would be pretty darn cool, right?
Yeah.
You raised a great point. And one thing that's interesting is that they seem to be the house band for every Canadian. You know, the late 80s, you know, they played the Toucan, they play Alfies. The boys lived in town for the most part.
Lived in town.
You see them around. They sublet Jim Brebner's house for a summer in Wreck on Aberdeen Street. And but what you put together there was absolutely perfect because they were our house band and we were local. We were in Kingston at the right
local. Yeah.
But unlike the Beatles, who played so few live shows, the Hip were able to connect and be everyone's hometown bar band because of their ability and to grind it out across Canada in a van. And it's been spoken of 1,000 times before, but that's why I think that we can all connect to those songs, is because they were ours, but they're everybody's.
And there's a deeper connection there too, even though probably the Hip don't know it. But Brad, you remember the magical weekend where Higgy and I came up to meet you on your graduation weekend, and we
remember parts of it. Yes,
we crashed. We went to the shot, but there was a sign on the door that said, yes. And we're like, "What the heck? Come on!" Yeah. We banged on the door, and Paul Shep and Mike Marshall were there at the bar. We said, "Let us in." We came up all the way, you know, and they said, well, "Okay, but it's a private party, but just come in and just behave." So we behave. We get a table and we're like shooting poop. A lot. Wait a minute. That looks like Paul Langlois over there standing in the court. Wait, there's Gord Downey and there's Mo Kaufman, Pursuit of Happiness, and there's 5440. There's Dan Aykroyd. What the heck? Yeah. Where are we? And we're like, we crashed Gord Downey's Stag. Yeah. Yeah. And then like, holy shit, let's buy lots of beer. And we were right into it and playing pool with these guys. And it was just.
And our friend Mr. Higgins would not leave Dan Aykroyd alone.
Oh, no. No.
Remember that part? Like, he doesn't want to hear your screenplay. I swear to God, he doesn't. We're told to behave.
And I think we closed the joint, right? We were the last ones.
I still got to get my picture of me and John Candy off that damn wall. Remember us at the football game? Yeah.
At the football game.
Yeah. Another random question: cover songs. Are you a fan of them or no?
You know what? I don't know. I'm a pretty purist. There's one cover song that sticks out in my mind, and Brad, I think I might have your old CD from 340 Frontenac, but it's a Tuck and Patty CD, and they covered Time After Time, a Cyndi Lauper song that will just, it's haunting to me. It's just so well.
Yeah.
Done so well just on a guitar, and that's the kind of cover I like, unplugged, right? As opposed to in a big stadium or anything like that.
Yeah.
Or club.
Well, I hate when someone covers a song but they don't change it. You know, like it just makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah.
I love cover songs. I have a library of ABs, and Brad, you're exactly right. If you're not changing the tonal quality or the experience, it's just karaoke in my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Who did that? Someone covered a Joni Mitchell song. Was it Counting Crows or something like that? It's like, my God, they just did the same freaking thing. It just drove me crazy every time I heard it. But it was quite successful because they had radio time, and then people are like, oh, who's this Joni Mitchell woman? Yeah, drove me crazy.
If you track down the ones that are so diametrically opposed to the original, for instance, Sonic Youth covered the Carpenters' Superstar, and the Sonic Youth version is A, terrifying, B, so musically different, and so enjoyable in a different context. It's just another layer of the same onion, but completely different valuation. Betty Everett's "You're No Good," brilliant song, made more brilliant by Linda Ronstadt. And it goes on and on with covers.
Yeah.
Al Green's "Take Me to the River," covered by Talking Heads. These things bounce around, and while there may be similar qualities in intonation and musical stylings, when there's a great spin on it, and all of those cases are great examples of a complete change, is when the cover song has a life of its own. And in some ways, cover songs can be massive producers for the artists who cover it, and can be a song that's requested heavily. Pearl Jam's a great, they covered Victoria Williams' "Crazy Mary," and that's probably one of their most requested songs. It's not even.
Yeah. Hey, I just what was that Trent Reznor song? I'm gapping it, but Johnny Cash did a cover of it. Yeah.
Hurt.
Yeah. And Trent Reznor said after, he says, "It's no longer my song."
Right. and the qualities of that song. I mean, Johnny Cash is very close to death, and it sounds like he is indeed. He may not make it through the song. And the song about addiction and the perils of it is a perfect match for Johnny Cash. Absolutely perfect. Couldn't be better.
Well, I think we might put a bow on this one. Chris, do you have any? Do you have anything in your pocket?
Every all night.
I just want to
whisper in your ear.
I just have to say that this concept of talking about music and your life is Chris Bingham. You're beautiful.
It has to have someone like you on our little program, a Canadian hero like Tim Faveri. This is my space homage to you. Conceived in a late night phone call with Brad Roark last summer. I wear this every single day in your honor.
In the height of
did you actually think you're going to get out of here without a space reference? Come on, Tim.
Oh my gosh! Look. When you pitched this to me, I said, oh, "Shit, I got to go find all my music," and I had to dig through boxes and boxes of shit in the basement to find my old tapes, because we're of a generation too where we transitioned through 3 or 4 medium, right?
Yeah.
Vinyl to track, to CDs to digital, right?
Did you have any 8-track?
I don't have any 8-track now, but I used to.
I never had any. Yeah.
And it was only played in the car, right? Because we had an old car that had an 8-track. But the thing is that I needed that to go down memory lane to think about, oh my God, like think about our generation and the kind of music that and the decades that we went through. And when I think of from Led Zeppelin and the Who and Elvis Costello and the Police and Billy, like I was completely everywhere with respect to my musical taste, but that kind of is me as well, right? Like that hardcore I only listened to this music. It was all over the map, and it just took me down so many different wormholes and rabbit holes of memories that whoever you move forward on with these podcasts is I hope feels the same way. Like, it's just been such a fun experience, and we gotta keep talking about this when we're
You know, one of the
So we-
reasons.
I've got tons of stories that have now resurfaced in my brain, Brad and Chris,
Well, you know, one of the
for
reasons.
another time.
One of the reasons that that I wanted to speak to you about music, and it harkens back to your observation that we've known each other for in excess of 30 years. You know, we've had road trips, we've had, you know, Winnebago trips back and forth. We've had, you know, parties and of course the house parties at Kingston and things like that. One of the connecting little strands between all of us is the music that followed us around. You know, everywhere we went, even as recent as when we were in Nashville together, there was always music on in the house, in the bars. You know, we had music on in the airport, even at 5 a.m. with Ford and I.
Oh my God.
But I was, of course, a latecomer to the party in terms of meeting you guys. But I've spoken to Brad about this, and I can pinpoint the exact second that I met Haney to Will. The exact second. I walked into Disgraceland. Young MC was on. Haney was dancing, breakdancing, some might say, alone in the living room. And I looked at him and I was instantly in love with this guy. He was just awesome. And he's been, I just spoke with him actually about 2 hours ago. But it's funny how music is a way to connect the dots. And I will never hear the first 4 bars of Young MC without Haney to Will.
So let's just pull on that thread. Haney to Will, for me, it's Freedom 90.
For me, Haney to Will, he was infatuated with Who Let the Dogs Out forever.
Yeah, exactly.
He's yeah. I think his sketchy taste in music is part of his magical charm.
It is magical. It is absolutely magical. And, you know, Chris, Brad, one of my fondest memories going back is going to be, you know, I think one of your questions that you sent me in advance was, what is your band name? And I said, I don't need a band name. I'm already part of a band. It's called Jock Climby and the Nashville Nut. That trip alone is going to be etched in history, right? Like,
That was a beauty.
We don't need it.
That kind of segues. If you had a say in who we interview next, who would it be? And bonus question, what's the one question you want us to ask that person?
Oh my gosh. You know, our crowd is pretty magical and special. I actually think I would go with Mike Taylor.
Oh,
because you know, I know there was one question that you had sent me in advance, and it was something like, you know, was there one person that had an impact of you that kind of made a break, that music kind of made or could make or break the relationship? And the story goes that on day one, when I arrived at Queens from summer camp up in, you know, Honey Harbor, Beausoleil Island, I arrived at McNeil House before Mike, and I dumped all my stuff and then had to go out to some event, and I left my tape briefcase. You remember the briefcases that we would have with our cassette tapes? I left it on the bed or in the dresser or something. And when I came back, it was open and there were tapes all over the place. And my ghetto blaster was there. I was like, holy shit, my roommate just went through my tapes. Like, I feel a little bit violated, right? And Mike comes in and goes, "Hey, like your choice of music. Why don't you pick something?" And I knew that was the test, right? That was the test. And I picked something that I had been listening to recently. I threw it in, and it was The Doors. And that was the absolute worst tape to pick out of the 40 tapes in that briefcase. Because Mike Taylor later told me, he goes, "I thought I was going to need to get a new roommate." I hate The Doors. I've always hated The Doors. I'll never listen to The Doors. But it was the second tape that turned him, because I threw Wham in, I think, whatever it was. So that showed my diversity in music. But Mike Taylor, he would be your next interview. Like,
You had me at jitterbug.
Hey, and last question, Tim. So we're making a playlist for you. What kind of playlist are we making for you? Is it like a road trip one? Is it like upbeat? Is it like a dinner party, like having friends over? Some like that? What are we doing for you?
Oh, we're living in a world today where we're not expanding our boundaries, right? not that much. We're not traveling that much because we're all at home. So I'd like a road trip tape. I like a mixtape, and you know me. I'm all over the map, but that would be pretty amazing.
Well, we're back. It's been 2 days, and Chris and I have had a lot of fun making our selections and going back and forth and talking about the stuff we chose and the reasons why, and yeah, it's been a blast. So we are about to present the playlist. Tim wanted a road trip playlist, so with that in mind, this is what we made, a playlist. I think it'd be kind of fun to put in the car and go for a long drive. So here we go. The Tim Faveri road trip playlist.
Tim mentioned the police picnic and mentioned Flock of Seagulls, and nobody can name a single other Flock of Seagulls song except I Ran. Like, not you can ask 1,000 people.
It's so funny because I popped up the video about a half an hour ago, and what a moody video.
Yeah.
Like, I actually didn't even do the research, but I'm like, they must have some German blood in them because they're very, they look like they're from the Big Lebowski.
So there's two bands that fit into that category in my life. One is the Flock of Seagulls. The other is Dexy's Midnight Runners. I defy you to tell me what one other Dexy's Midnight Runners song was. Just one. Anything. Just one.
Oh, can't do it. I will not.
You can't. Because there is only one.
They just put out a single.
And that sucks, because they're actually a really, really good band that got caught in the one-hit wonder wheel of death, and that was over for them. So
there is no organization to how we're going to do this, because we're just going to talk about random stuff.
Yeah,
because going back to your point about the hip, though, like Small Town Breakdown, like I kind of wanted to get into the whole thing of like just wondering like what it was like, trying to remember what it was like to hear them, because I remember thinking, they're okay, they're fun, they're good, it's interesting stage show, but what iteration did we hear of that song? Like how well developed was it? Like, was Johnny Faye any good at the drums at that time? Like who was better? Who had it already and who was struggling? Like did Downey have, like, I think he had his show pretty good. He was doing the the chaotic movements right from the get-go. So I remember that.
Yeah, and you might remember the early shows as I do, as early from the early Alfie's days, where most of their set was cover tunes, and they covered a ton of Rolling Stones, and they did a rendition of a super rare track called Cocksucker Blues. I don't know if you're familiar with the Stone Cocksucker Blues.
Is that what album is that? Is that Exile on Main Street, or?
I think it's on I only have a live track of that, and And I remember being at Alfie's and seeing the band with a good friend of the band's called Jim Bredner, and Bruce McDonald, Allison, and they wound up this song, and I'm thinking, holy God, I thought I was the only guy on the planet who knew this obscure song that
Yeah.
would not be getting any airplay. But
Which, talk about ballsy too, because you're trying to create an audience, win an audience,
Yeah.
and you're playing a song no one's fucking heard of.
right.
You know. But,
And I think that that's the great thing about nostalgia. All of the shows, of course, are fantastic, even though they probably weren't. And because we have a knack for revisionist history in terms of people that we love and adore and bands that we feel the same about, everything was good. And they had their off nights too. There's no question. I was just so lucky to see them so many times. I don't remember a flat night. But in the early days, what bands were great every night, when they're just getting going,
Absolutely. That being said, we probably helped the show. We helped the listening experience because there was never a show that we weren't quite lit.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, this is going to be fun.
It was the perfect venue. It was the perfect size. You had a captive audience who was well lubricated, and everybody was up. Everyone had the same intent. It wasn't like you were going into a room of malcontents, that weren't willing to listen to music. And a lot of people weren't listening. You might remember there was a tons of yammering and stuff, but with a good enough PA and enough band intent, they were ready to rock and roll the night away and roll over all the conversation. And they just put it out there, probably from their earliest shows, right to the bitter end, which was actually bitter.
Well, should we get at it?
Yeah, let's get at it. How are we running this little race?
Well, we're already recording, so we're just
are we?
gonna
Okay.
see.
Okay, fair enough.
Let's just see how this shakes out. But my first song, like, I kind of think of like actually making the playlist, right? And I thought, Eminence Front. It's not their best song. It's from their least favorite album. I think it's the only song it's the only song that they thought was salvageable from that album. I think it was like one of those, was that like a studio album that they had to make, and they're just like, whatever, we're just gonna do it. And but it's just, I love good intros and a build. And that's what I love about that. It's like you put that in, you're just heading out of town, and it's like you just feel the build coming on, and it's like, all right, I guess we're on a road trip, So that was my.
You know what? I agree with you completely. The multiple overdubs that Pete did for Eminence Front, and that whole record situation was a debacle. He wasn't speaking to Roger. Roger wasn't speaking to him. It became a labor. Pete's been interviewed about it many times, but I agree with you wholly that you put that thing on, you're going to hear the first few bars of that repetitive strain, and the build is absolutely fantastic. I mean, my go-to is a go-to because it's a powerhouse song that
Baba Riley.
It speaks to youth, sure, but absolutely, Eminence Front is a good builder, and if you're talking road trip, a builder is what you want.
Yeah, exactly. So, question for you though. I can say honestly, I never knew Teenage Wasteland was not the name of the song for quite some time.
Well,
for your selection, Baba Riley.
Baba. Well, I mean, I think that there's probably nothing wrong with that in the end, because if the sentiment is what's left behind, when you dip your pan in the river and the only thing left is the gold. If the only thing people came out with was Teenage Wasteland, I think that they got it right anyway.
Yeah, and I don't think we ever missed the timing on "We're All Wasted."
No, it's perfect. I don't think anyone said, that song, Out Here in the Fields. That song.
They were really angry with us for trashing Woodstock. I didn't get that out of the song.
Yeah.
All I got was they approve of us being wasted.
Fully.
Do
Love
you
it.
want to go next? What do you got?
Great choice. Tim mentioned his parents' musical taste and love of music, and it became pretty clear that he came from a house with music, and any house that plays Willie Nelson is okay by me. And of course I chose Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain, and a song that I was familiar with absolutely from my formative years. But I'm a Willie fan. I had an accidental meeting with Willie at the after a sleepless night, and it sounds like a wild ride, and it was January 1st, 1987 in Dallas. I did have a run-in with Willie, and I was a little bit too shy.
Did you start your night in Dallas, or did you just end up there?
We started. I started in Dallas.
Okay, good to know.
Ended up somewhere else, and came back to Dallas in the morning with our tails between our legs, and we were to be at the Cotton Bowl. Our host thought that we were dead in a ditch somewhere, and we're pretty upset, but this is all pre-cell phone. And we were told to get cleaned up, have a Molly Hogan, which is a traditional New Year's Day Dallas drink, get our shit together and get to the game. And lo and behold, wander up into the box, and Willie's up there enjoying Auburn versus Texas A&M with our hosts, and it was a silly ride. If I knew he was a burner at the time, I probably would have had an extra reason to hang out with Willie. But
how did you not know he was a burner? I would have think you would have entered the stadium going, smells like Willie.
I know. That's another. You know what? It's just one in a series of missed opportunities in my life. But Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain is my absolute favorite Willie Nelson song. It's got the melody is beautiful. It's a song about being wounded and with no healing in sight, and it's just a heart wrencher. I'm crazy about it. And that's why I ran with that pick, because I guarantee that one would have been played in the home for sure.
Just as they're winding down the night, everyone's a little wasted downstairs, all the parents. Some tears.
I don't know. Yeah, I that's what I see in my head in the Faveri home.
So this is a great difference between you and me, because you see that side. I see his mom,
Right.
lovely mom, Irene, who drank drinking games with us at Alfie's in first and second year. It's like, oh, the parents are here, they're buying. This is amazing, like it was like, but Irene was, well, both of them were so much fun, but Irene, she could drink like no one's business. And she was so much fun. So I just picture her in the basement dancing, bell bottoms, platform shoes. And then I think of Bee Gees. I don't know if he mentioned this, but for some reason I have my own vision. I'm sorry, Tim, but it's like, I'm going to run with my vision. And there was some fun music down there, but, and Tim did say he likes the odd cover song. So that's why I put Staying Alive by Tropical Fuckstorm. It is hilarious. Like that, her voice, like she takes it to the limit a lot. And then at the end, they thrash it a little bit. Like there's some serious guitars coming through. So I'm like, cover song, Irene dancing, Bee Gees. I'm like, somehow it all just makes sense to me. And then I'm going to go twice, because the fact that if it was today, and if Tim was like 6, 7 years old today, or maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and the parents were downstairs in the rec room, it might be playing something like Lizzo, Good as Hell,
Yep.
What is it? I do my hair toss, check my nails. Like, come on, just picturing the girls just hair toss, check the nails. It's just a fantastic visual,
100%.
So, okay, I'm pretty
I
much
connect,
done with the basement.
I connect the parents to in my head. They're just driving a Volkswagen Westphalia around with the tunes cranked, and they're just the whole family's getting into it. My pick for the adolescent Tim, and of course in my head, is with the giant bolt of black hair rocking out to Monkey Bars by Coney Hatch at
I know.
the stadium show in London, and I can see, because I can picture this. I can picture him, and you know, his arms are straight down at his side, and he is just losing it because
May I?
Monkey Bars is and it's just it's great because I can see this, I can see it happening.
Here's some lyrics. Eating's easy when you're chimps like us. Banana splits are a definite plus. Monkey bars.
You see, it's just poetry.
It's
Poetry.
absolutely something about, we have jobs in the Amazon. I learned a lot about social studies from that band. It was classic. But you know, it's so funny to think that I was definitely at that concert with Tim Faveri. You know, there's no chance that we weren't together. So, you know, in the same in the same arena, going crazy to this upstart great band, Coney Hatch. And then, you know, he mentioned Queen. This is like an easy one. Another one bites the dust for me. I know you picked another one, Queen, but just, you know, once again, and I hope I don't insert too much myself into this, because the fact I'm a sucker for bass. Like any song that starts with the slapping of the bass, just, you know.
Well, any song that starts with the bass line from Good Times, I'm all over.
Yeah, exactly. And that was that bass player hanging out with Chic, and I think it was in Paris, and hanging out with them, coming back to the band. They're like, it's a little too disco, like a little, and this is not us, but they played it in live shows to get the crowd going. And, you know, and Urban Myth, and I think it's true because I've read it so many times, with Michael Jackson coming backstage and going, that was an amazing song. They're like, yeah, it's just for live shows. And he's like, you got to put that in an album. It's like, yeah, I mean, you know, like good old Michael Jackson knew what to put in an album.
He knew what to put on the records for sure. Absolutely. I think that's a good one. The reason I went with Sheer Heart Attack is because before Queen was fully operatic and had such a bigger scope of their music. The reason I went with Sheer Heart Attack is it's just such a punk song. It's a driver. It doesn't showcase any of the deep talents of it, although Brian May's guitar is superb in it. But that one just spoke to me when all the grade 8 girls were singing, you know, another, or We Are the Champions or something like that. You know, I'm scrounging around to put Sheer Heart Attack on because it was a rocker. It was the antithesis of the beautiful Freddie Mercury voice, and really spoke to 1977 rock that was turning in the direction that I thought it should go to. So it's that's one really pulled out of the bottom of the bag. That's a day old donut in terms of Queen's repertoire, but it's one that I'm always loving. So that's why I had to go with that one.
You know, I just had this vision of you. I know you love, like you're talking about that reunion you had a few years ago with all your the friends from school, and playing great tunes, and of course, you know, you've got the collection, you know what you're doing. But I can just imagine you trying to be a commercial DJ and someone requesting a song, you're like, it's not going to fucking happen. This just will not happen.
I am so rude about music. No, that's shit. Sorry. Oh, excuse me. Could you play? No.
That would be me.
You know, I'd be the crappy. I'd be the asshole record store employee from High Fidelity. You know, I'd be. Get out.
Well, from that concert, I don't know if they were the same concert, but Tim and I, in those early days, we saw other group, Triumph, you know, legendary. They played Southwestern Ontario endlessly. But I will always think of Magic Power. That I love that song, you know, and it speaks to that time where you're waiting for the DJ to play your favorite song. So you are there, like you just, it just speaks to that time where you couldn't buy every record. So if there was a new song and you didn't have the money, you essentially sat by the radio for hours waiting for the DJ to play your favorite song. And I must say, when I think of myself at Triumph concerts, I was such a dick. I'm sure after every song I was screaming, "Magic Power! When are you gonna play Magic Power?" That's all I did. Like, oh my God, they just hated me. I'm sorry, Chris, but I look at my younger self and I don't think I would like myself.
I think you'd like yourself, and I'm sure I would detest myself. Asshole. But I've been meaning to for years. I've been meaning to ask Mike Levine what was the deal on him wearing a St. Louis Blues hockey jersey on stage. I don't know if you remember that phase of Triumph, but he went through this phase of wearing a St. Louis Blues, and I've had the chance, you know, and I don't know why I didn't ask. I just could just, you know, kind of pass me by, but I've always wanted to know what's the deal.
Yeah, it's probably, you know, could he have grown up with a buddy who actually made it to the show, and he's like, you know, that was now his favorite team, you know, like
could have been,
you know, like it's not like they were getting a St. Louis feed, you know.
He was being kind of he was a little bit ahead of his time with the jersey wearing, I guess.
Yeah.
It's just adults wearing hockey jerseys.
You want to go? What do you got?
Yeah, he mentioned the police picnic, or rather, he mentioned a Who show where Joe Jackson had was the support act. That was a bad call across the board. Joe Jackson, and I see him with Look Sharp Behind Your Shoulder, one of my all-time favorite records.
That's playing it this morning, actually.
And so yeah, you know, I went with a song Different for Girls, because it's certainly not one of the bigger toe tappers, but I think it's well, I mean, certainly probably my favorite Joe Jackson song, but I think more importantly, it's a song that tells a great story, and it tells a great story about relationships. I think that it's a great assessment of male-female relationships, but of course I think it transcends that. I think that the idea behind it is any relationship, and you know, the opening bars, great bass line, and then, you know, the opening phrasing of "What the hell is wrong with you tonight? I can't seem to say or do the right thing." It just guts you, and it's not insincere. It just blows me away. And I think what's probably a shame is that sure, that was a match not made in heaven for Joe Jackson to play, because of the band's musical precision would be lost being a support act for a band like the Who, but on their own, and I've seen Joe many times, just absolutely terrific, and I remain a huge fan. So that's why I threw that one out. Not that it was certainly a big hit for him, but certainly something that I can relate to, and I could see Tim enjoying.
Yeah, and you know what, when you think of those lyrics too, is like the guys, it's the negotiation thing, right? Like,
Absolutely.
I mean, the guy's like, he is saying all the right things, and then she says, "You're all the same." Yeah. You guys are all the same. Yeah. You know, I've heard this shit before. Exactly. You know, and I absolutely love that. But then I think about Tim's little recounting of like all the guys getting their square on the sectional couch and making out, and then
that's
classic story. Yeah. Classic story. But that's it. Like, I mean, if one of those girls are actually wise to the world, to be like, I'm out of here. This is bullshit, you know? So, and I'm sure they all left en masse because they were all friends, and the one that got broken up with, if they had, you know,
it was the exodus. And the guys got left kind of staring at each other, saying, you know,
what do we do wrong? Who messed this up?
I guess we go play road hockey in the driveway now. There's nothing else to do. What have you got?
Well, you mentioned police picnic, and the Spoons were in there. The Spoons made many appearances at the police picnic, and
many
the Spoon. the Spoons will always, well, they made many appearances in our lives,
Yes.
because
No.
they came to Queens many a time, and I think I've seen them in London, and I saw them at Queens, but I remember the one time we saw them at Stages across the street from AJ's, and it was the house, and it was a bunch of us. But once again, Sandy Horn must hate us because we would just stand in front of her.
Oh,
Sandy,
yeah.
I love you, Sandy.
Well, Sandy had her comeuppance with the stage jewelers too, because she would have laser focus eye contact with somebody and just
Me.
play mind games with them for the entire show. And
Yeah, it was me. Yeah,
she totally loves me. And hats off. Sandy was not only a great singer, fine bass player, and it was an interesting thing about that about the band that I wasn't a fan of the direction they took with Romantic Traffic and things, but the longer playing reissue of Nova Heart stands up as just a terrific Canadian track.
Mhm.
Absolutely fantastic. They had a kid, Rob Pruss, who played, I believe that was, he played keyboards. He was about 12 years old when he was touring Ontario in a van with the band. I mean, it was crazy. And they were the consummate college, university book band who could fill a venue and everyone left loving it. They were certainly among the cream of the crop of Canadian college touring bands. They did a great job, always put on a good show, and totally impressive.
You got to have some thick skin to do that circuit, because we're loving it, but at the same time, we're idiots.
Of course. Yeah.
So,
complete idiots.
Yeah, absolutely. We're paying the bills, but we're doing stupid shit, What are we beyond his youth? Are we still in his youth? What do you got?
I'm jumping around a little bit. He he mentioned Police Picnic, of course, and while you got to, I'm not sure if you were at that particular show, but the Police Picnic he mentioned with Joan Jett, and I'm a huge fan of powerful women in rock. I mean, Chrissy Hynde from the Pretenders is my all-time punk rock girlfriend, and I'm just loving. I'm loving bands like Haim and these I mean,
we just listened.
I'm an unapologetic Billie Eilish fan, and I'm liking strong women represented in rock. I always have, and for that reason, with his Police Picnic reference to Joan Jett, I went back to her Runaways band, so one iteration before her solo career, but at that show she did play Cherry Bomb, which is just a snotty teenage song about about teenagehood, and hello daddy, hello mom. It's got everything that the tough cool girls that you would have seen at the CNE that you would never ever approach or talk to, but you probably admired. It has every piece of that in a song, and for that reason I threw that in, because I could see Tim at the CNE or something. I could see the whole scene unfolding, and I chose that song for him, for the Joan Jett reference, for that exact reason.
He was a master of trying to set things up for himself to make an approach. There was someone there that was impossible to meet. He would definitely give it a shot, out of his league or not.
A complete gamer.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm sure his wife's not going to love this, but Tim.
No, she's not going to like it one bit.
Hey, and that police song, what did you pick for the police song? I didn't even choose one. Because you picked a good one. What the heck was that?
Oh, I went with Regarded Blanc
Yeah,
because
which
it is for many reasons. Again, I steer away from the big hits. It doesn't. It's not an ego trip for Sting, but rhythmically, it's a Stuart Copeland masterpiece, I think, and it's multi-layered, and it is a throwdown of their musical talent for a trio to put that out. But I love that song.
it's
Absolutely.
essentially just a jam session.
It's a
You
jam.
know,
Yeah.
it was born out. Well, they were jamming to a song, and it came out of that. Like, I actually made a note of that. Oh, Can't Stand Losing You.
Yeah.
They were playing that, and like in live shows, and they kind of went into this all the time. And they're like, maybe we should just do this part and record it. And I love that.
And it's a prototypical throwaway B-side that a music geek would gravitate to because it was not a hit.
Yeah.
And
this is a good reference, and Tim will love this. And this is just for us, but his good friend, I just saw him 2 nights ago, Hamayan, at the restaurant, and Hamayan is the biggest police, like maybe the biggest police fan of all time, where he's on the special list. If they're playing the show of 200 people in a castle in Wales, he somehow gets there. Like he has literally seen them, like the numbers are staggering, like 500 times. It's crazy, and just keeps going back and back. And so I just bumped into him, and it was hilarious because we just talked to Tim, I think the night before. I'm like, oh my God, how about great timing for this? Yeah, no, he's got some good stories for sure. And Tim mentioned the country influence, taking his daughter down in North Carolina. And this was the night before you got to Nashville. We actually arrived a night early, and we went to the 5 spot, which is too bad we didn't go there every night, because there's so much talent there. And it was just Jock, Tim, and I, and I think it was just the 3 of us. And some people were arriving later, but we were out, and Robbie, his very musical cousin, right? And they had known of this band, the Fairground Saints, and you're listening to, it was a lot of people who were studio musicians or a lot of writers who just said, I need to play. So they go to the 5 spot, do their thing. Amazing talent. And it was funny because Robbie was halfway through the night, he's like, this is amazing. And it's also very disheartening because you saw so much talent that was never going to see the light of day. And he's like, geez, I'm definitely, we're never going to make it. These people are just hanging out. And then, so much talent. And then Fairground Saints came on, and 3 people, their harmonies, this one guy who could play the mandolin like no one's business. And it was just like, wow. And I've kept track of them ever since. And somewhere down the line, it's actually a road trip song talking about getting your car, full tank of gas, getting out of here getting out of the small town with small town dreams. And I'm like,
beautiful.
That's a good lyric, and it's a good one. I think Tim will like that song. So that's my country contribution.
I've gone back to Nashville, as a few times since we were all there together, and the 5 spot has been on my agenda every time. And I do the open mic nights at the 5 spot, and unlike a typical, say, Toronto open mic, where someone goes on and people keep talking, the reverence for the performer. I mean, everybody's having drinks or having a good time, and at the 5 spot, it's a 2 or 3 song proposition for the open stage, and it could be a newcomer, but generally it's established singer-songwriters trying out new stuff. And it's a roll of the dice. You never know who you're going to get, and the place is full, and as soon as somebody steps onto that stage, silence. Complete focus on the song, and they'll do their 2 or 3. So these are music fans who go there. They're not there talking over the musicians, and it's frustrating. I guess my music's always been so loud. I've never ever heard anybody talk. They usually head for the doors when we got on, but but I just love there's nothing happening, no one at the bar. It's just singularly focused on the performance, and just the manners of that place is perfect.
Yeah.
And more perfect is not only the musicians you saw, but that song for our purposes couldn't be more tailor-made to it. It's just absolutely brilliant. That's great.
Absolutely. Yeah. What do we got here?
You
Oh,
You
what's
had a
that?
couple beauties. You had a couple great picks that that were sort of towards the end of your list. I'm trying to pull up which, or remember which ones that you had.
Actually, well, you know what I put in, because when I think of the hip, I kind of think of like, Tim, to his own admission, is not terribly current. We all,
Yeah.
our biggest influences are the university days and not
Hmm.
shortly thereafter, and that's when we had time to listen. Of course, growing up too in teenage years, but so the hip, obviously, we talk about that endlessly, and so Small Town Breakdown was the one I chose, and then but that group coming out of Kingston, Glorious Sons,
Oh yeah.
and like first time I heard them, I'm like, this sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Like they definitely took some notes and saw some shows
Yeah.
and drank the water. Like, I mean, they bring it. And I don't know, 2-3 years, like, I don't know how long they've been doing this, but they've got some serious chops. Like I've just seen some YouTube stuff of their live concerts. I haven't been able to see them live. Oh, they bring it. They're good.
There's another Kingston-based band, Queen's Boys, that I knew growing up, and they're buddies of my son's, the same age, and I went to see them at the Horseshoe, and because I was told they're ripping it up in Kingston, you're gonna love their live show. A band called Bo Welland, and I went to the Horseshoe, and they packed the place out, and they brought this energy that, because they were young and because they had this level of energy, musically not connected in any way to our the most popular of all Kingston bands, but it was so refreshing to see a youth movement, that they were absolutely, they weren't posing, they weren't strutting around, they just were going ape shit and loving every second of being on the stage. The energy was infectious, and I just was in the back of the room with a huge grin on my face, saying, this is exactly the way it should be.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No covers, all originals, just ripping it out, and people were having a good time, and that took me back, because
Yeah.
I was by far the oldest person in the room, by far.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So as much as I wanted to be a larger part of the inner circle at the front, which is my normal game at a show, I was restrained and sat back there, and kind of thought to myself that the kids are all right. It was good. I know exactly how you're feeling about Glorious Sons. It's something that I hope evolves for them, because I think we need more music like that.
Well, and I'm going to go again, because when I think of bringing it, and then the Led Zeppelin reference, Black Pistol Fire.
Oh yeah.
Like, oh yeah. Holy Jesus Christ! Like, two guys and the drummer, like, he's like the guy from the Muppets, just like hair, never a shirt on, and just how the drums survive one set. Like, he's going like John Bonham. Like, it is something else.
He was a heavy hitter.
It is a full sweat fest, like those guys. And I oh geez, here we go.
That's all right.
There we go. Yeah, but I'm kind of making this mental list too, of like going through the bands I haven't seen. I'm like, what a checklist we have when COVID's over. Like, we got lots of, they're going to be raring to go. hopefully there's
Every-
venues for them.
It's going to be interesting because there's this great pent up energy to see live music. I speak to people about it all the time, and we're just crossing our fingers that these terrific venues, just down the street from us, we have the Danforth Music Hall, which I think pound for pound is one of the greatest venues to see a band in the city of Toronto, next to the Horseshoe, which I think is the best. And I think the crown of all, of course, is Massey Hall. So you'll have Massey Hall after a 4-year renovation, coming back on stream for larger acts, but the backfill places are going to be super important to bands getting back on track. My worry is that the smaller venues, some of course aren't going to make it, and that's going to be a heartbreak for bands to get a spot to play.
What about Masonic Temple? Is that still in play?
Masonic Temple really hasn't been a viable concert venue for years and years and years. After it was the CTV property, it was the Much Music produced a couple shows out of there, and I don't know who owns it right now. I think it's a software company or something that owns it.
Well, that shows how long I've seen a show. There's how long I've seen a show in Toronto. Yeah,
it was for me a huge part of my youth. The bar across the street, the Morrissey, of course, was a big part of the walk in there. But my memories of that venue, of course, are the Jam and the Red Hot Chili Peppers, the Pogues, God, Sugar, Bob Moldek's Husker Du, and these are the type of shows that were just sweat boxes. And when you're in your 20s, the sweat box shows were always the best.
Absolutely.
They were. You came out beaten to crap and exhausted. Not there's no violence, but you were from the energy that you received and the energy that you put out, you were spent, and you were sweaty. And then you went out onto Yonge Street and it was -30, and then hypothermia set in pretty quickly. It was the full rock and roll experience.
It was
I miss that place desperately. I do. I miss that experience desperately.
Yeah. It's we're almost gonna need a break of just taking a break from life and work, just so I can pack in like 30 shows in a row and just get it out of the system.
Yeah.
You know what? I picked I'm not sure what you did for Bowie, but I did Young Americans, and once again, I don't know if I can ever get Luther Vandross as my backing vocal. I'll take it. But I think those were. I think he was coming off his party days, but he just settled into to that studio, and I think that he used a lot of the soul R&B musicians for that. And I don't know. That's one of my favorite songs. So Faveri's getting that one.
It was post Mick Ronson, obviously, and I didn't throw one out there because A, I knew you would have a great one, and B, I've got so many favorites of Bowie's. I'd be twisted up to pick one that I thought would do justice. So I'm glad you went with that one. It's perfect. It's absolutely perfect.
What do you got?
Harkening back to his early days, and he said that there's a little Neil Diamond in the house, and it was my experience as well. I mentioned that I think we had the same mothers, but that song, which is also one of the very famous cover song by Urge Overkill, is "Girl, You'll Be a Woman Soon."
Yeah,
which is just a superb bit of songwriting. Musically, it's great, and lyrically, it hits it out of the park too. It tells a great story, and if you broke the story down again, I just think it's something that Tim would probably lock onto as well. So
well, absolutely, but I don't think we asked Tim this question, but if you had a favorite film music scene, her doing this in Pulp Fiction is just,
exactly.
it was Urge Overkill
Yeah.
version, but Like every time I hear that, I'm like, I just see Uma Thurman. Like that's just, you know, for it to be Tarantino, you know, we could go on and on about him, but like me, just for him to make such a strong association is just like, you know, with Reservoir Dogs, Stuck in the Middle with You. Like every time I hear that song, I'm like, oh, I'm a little uncomfortable right now. You know, it's like, Jesus Christ, that boy has done it more than once. You know, that's pretty serious. I love that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I know that the Associated Media that used those songs would appeal to Tim as well, so that's why he got that one.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, I love your Elvis Costello song.
Oof, you know, I think the reason I love it.
Just people know, radio. Just for the viewers at home.
Radio is just such a great snotty, you know, fuck you to the way music was presented, you know, in the 70s. And I think the greater story of that is Elvis Costello was in America and was to be on Saturday Night Live, and Lorne Michaels forbade Elvis Costello from playing that song. And
you know the full story.
And well, it was a big FU and lit it up, and I guess was banned from Saturday Night Live, which is probably a great blessing to him in the end. But well,
absolutely. But here's the lovely part about that is that on that show, Sex Pistols were supposed to be on the show.
That's right.
They said no.
Right.
And then they asked the Ramones, and Joey Ramone said, "We are no one's substitute." So he did it just based on principle.
I didn't know the Ramones connection. I did not.
So third choice was Elvis Costello, and his manager wanted to play that song because it was gaining some traction in England, but it was about the British politicians, and they're like, this makes no fucking sense. So they played the first two bars of that, and he stops, and he says, "This is ridiculous." Goes into radio. For the entire song, Lorne Michael is standing in front of them.
No way.
The entire song.
That's great. That's great.
Live TV.
That was kind of a nice mirrored FU, because it was an FU from Elvis Costello, who, by the way, I accidentally knocked over carrying my hockey equipment up to a factory loft at King's Cross, St. Pancras, to go up to my buddy Peter Doig's loft. And
the artist.
Yeah. And we were playing hockey together in England, and I had all this crap. I think I was staying at his place, and and I was running up these stairs, and you know, I was half the size I am now at that point, but I wasn't looking where I was going, and I knocked this poor fellow over, and you know, and apologized profusely. I mean, in the best Canadian way, and said, you know, I'm so sorry, and I just sort of kept my head down, and I got to Pete's apartment, and I said, it kind of came to, and I said, I think I just knocked Elvis Costello over, and he said, oh yeah, he's dating the girl upstairs, so.
And Elvis Costello says to the girl upstairs, he says,
"Who's that idiot?
I think I got knocked over by fucking
some idiot with a hockey, carrying a hockey stick in a hockey bag up to Pete Doig's loft." Which,
it's inconceivable. So that didn't happen because no one has hockey equipment here, but I think it felt like hockey equipment.
What I remember about that, and it is musically connected, that whole loft setup at King's Cross was Linton Kwesi Johnson was playing parties there at the time, and it was just such a cool art scene in that area, music and stuff. This is 1986, when the academics at the school I went to before Kingston, I was at Carleton, decided that I should take a break from school. It would be best for everyone if I took a Rumspringa and had a little break from school. So I was off.
To help your learning. Yeah, they wanted to
was.
assist
And
your learning.
it informed the rest of my life for sure. And but it was an interesting time. I not only did was I seeing Linton Kwesi Johnson. I was a kind friend. I was virtually penniless. Let me stay in his home in Highgate, and one of my neighbors was a very addicted, very sad boy, George, who at the time was sort of wandering aimlessly and very sad. I mean, I kind of wish I was a little more of a star fucker, because I probably would have been all over speaking to these people, but I tend to leave people alone a lot, and it was an interesting time. So that's my Elvis Costello, knocking Elvis Costello over story. And
with a bit of Boy George thrown in, didn't see that coming.
George and Linton Kwesi Johnson.
Yeah, exactly. And all of this is around Peter Doig. Like,
and
I mean,
it's all around Pete. Yeah. So,
yeah, amazing. Oh, I love it. You know what cracks me up is that I didn't fully look at your list. I like sped read it, and then tonight I'm like, oh yeah, Michael Jackson and Don't Stop Till You Get Enough, and I was like, oh, I can't wait to see. And I looked over, I'm like, that's the one you chose. Perfect.
Well,
but I can see that. I can see just the, Faveri, first, second year, well, Whiskers during the afternoons on Fridays before we went to Alfie's. So that would be a 3 p.m. start on a Friday, maybe 2:30. And I can almost visualize like do and just like, it's time to hit the dance floor. It's just such a great introduction to that.
I love that song. It is. There's not even a contest in what my favorite Michael Jackson song is, and the reason for this is, I worked at the CNE as a young teenager, and I always worked late into the night and would take the streetcar to the subway, and it was a long subway home, and I got on a subway that was virtually empty except for a lot of young folks, and they're all just having a great time. And next thing you know, this train starts moving, and a young guy with a boombox puts that song on, and they're all dancing and just losing it, and it was loud, and I'm just sitting there, this tiny, like 13-year-old white kid, and I am loving every second of it. It was joy. It was. I mean, it kind of, to my mind, it was like a scene out of Fame or something. I mean, it was the perfect time, the perfect energy, the perfect song. This guy had one of these beautiful giant JVC boom boxes that ran on about 20 D-cell batteries, and it was for that reason, it is the high water mark and will remain so for me forever. I love that song.
That's so awesome. I love that. That's such a pure story. It's just like no one contrived that. It's just like you push play and it just happens. What do you think? Have we wrapped it up? Like, we got a bunch of other stuff, but that was a fun chat. That was good.
It was, and I got to tell you, I loved your picks, and I made an amended playlist featuring yours, and I think if it was a thumb battle, you won, because I did listen to them side by side, and you picked so many beauties. They were just fantastic. So. I hope Mr. Faveri is satisfied with what we put together for him.
It's for us, really.
It is for us.
It has his name on it, but I'm like, this shit makes me happy. All right. Well, so much for a 20-minute conversation.
Yeah. It's 11:07 Eastern Standard Time.
I know, and I just
probably get to work.
Oh no. But I laugh because the fact that Joe Rogan's got these 3-hour podcasts, like fucking hours, like Jesus Christ, like, I mean, and I've listened to them with driving in the car, but I'm like, okay, this is our podcast, Chris. You probably want 20 minutes with Tim, maximum 20 minutes for us, you
Maximum.
know, 40 minutes, you know,
gotta
TED
shut up.
Talks is around like X number of minutes. We probably want to fit in that model.
I'm
I
just
think
trying
we
to
just
make it
lost
as
some.
difficult as possible for you to edit this down to 20 minutes because I won't. Because
The
I
hell
won't.
am I going to
shut
edit
up.
out of this? You know, it's
Oh my
there will be a warning of like, you know, please push pause. We need to go to the washroom and you
There
know,
you
come
go.
back to us. You know, we'll
How
be
can
talking
you
about the same stuff. Well, there you go. That was a blast. That was a lot of fun talking to Chris, and we didn't even, we left out a bunch of songs. So the playlists are on the website, and there's a few services we're using. Apple, we're using a Spotify, and I think Amazon, but we'll see how that goes. So yeah, check it out. The playlists are up for you to enjoy. And once again, a huge thanks to Tim for being our first guest and having patience with us as we stumbled through some parts of that interview. But it was a lot of fun, and yeah, hopefully we'll see you next week. So thanks for coming out.